Senator Ted Cruz, 2016 Republican GOP nominee, is with us. How are you, sir?
Sean, I'm doing terrific. Thanks for having me.
You know, this is a big part of the message that I think that is keeping you in the top tier of candidates, which is that you are taking on the idea that Republicans do not fight. They don't fight on immigration. They don't use their constitutional authority on health care. And again, and I would argue they won't end up doing it on Planned Parenthood either. But you're the guy saying these are our values, these are our promises, and yet they don't stand with you. I don't understand it.
Sean, you're exactly right. You know, if you look at the left, if you look at Barack Obama or Harry Reid or Nancy Pelosi, they are committed to their liberal principles. They are committed to their policy agenda that, frankly, is destroying this country. And they will crawl over broken glass with a knife between their teeth to advance their policy agenda. On our side, we've got a bunch of weenies. On our side, we begin with a preemptive surrender right at the outset. So every fight, if it comes down to the Barack Obama versus congressional leadership surrenders. So, for example, Obama says, I will veto the budget for the entire federal government if Congress doesn't fund Obamacare, which is hurting millions of Americans. And Republican leadership says, okay, great, we'll fund Obamacare. Obama says, I'll veto the whole federal government if you don't fund my illegal executive amnesty. And Republican leadership says, okay, great, we'll fund amnesty. Right now, today, Obama is saying, I will veto the budget of the entire federal government unless you send $500 million to Planned Parenthood, a private organization. It's not even part of the government. It's a separate private organization, but he wants $500 million of taxpayer money, despite the fact that Planned Parenthood is right now in the midst of multiple ongoing criminal investigations for an ongoing pattern of felonies. And what does Republican leadership say? Okay, great, we'll fund Planned Parenthood. What the heck is the point of having elections if the people we elect won't stand and fight? I think that's why people are sick and tired of it.
But in every one of these arguments, Senator, the leadership will argue, no, we have the same goals, we just have different tactics. Well, the net result of their tactics are that they cave and Obama gets what he wants, and that happens every single solitary time, pretty much without exception.
You are exactly right, and tactic is their code word. That they have one tactic, and that is surrender. So the question they get, just yesterday, my colleague, Senator Kelly Ayotte, sent me a letter that she publicly released to the press saying, please explain to me how you're going to get 67 votes in the Senate to defund Planned Parenthood. And if not, we shouldn't do anything. Well, that letter really reveals the problem with the thinking right at the top. And that's a letter that came from leadership. Kelly wrote it, but it's a leadership letter. Their view is, unless you can get 67 senators on board, it's not worth doing. If they believe that, I would encourage the next time Mitch McConnell runs for re-election for him to tell the people of Kentucky, I will only do what Harry Reid agrees because I need 67 senators. I need Democrats. So I will hand over my vote to Harry Reid. Anytime Harry Reid says it's okay, I'll fight for something. But if Harry Reid doesn't, I won't. That's the problem. Their view is, and
Senator,
left,
I think, Senator,
you don't see Democrats saying that.
I think we need new leadership in the House and Senate. I think it's time to get real conservatives that will fight for their principles in there, because I don't see it there now.
You are exactly right. And let me make a second point, Sean, that's important. The back and forth that I had with Jeb Bush at the debate about John Roberts, I actually think that principle, it's very applicable to Supreme Court justices. The next president's going to appoint likely 2 or 3 or 4. But it's also centrally applicable to who the Republican nominee is in 2016. The reason why David Souter and John Roberts were chosen is because they didn't have a paper trail. You couldn't prove they were a conservative. And when push came to shove, both of them violated their oaths. The way you prevent that is you nominate a candidate like an Antonin Scalia, like a Clarence Thomas, like a William Rehnquist, like a Mike Ludig, like an Edith Jones, who has year after year after year of a proven record. That's how you know how they will behave in the future, because they've stood and endured the fire in the past. And if you look at the 2016 Republican primary field, the biggest difference between me and the other candidates on that stage, every one of them is telling the American people, I'm running to stand up to Washington, to stand up to the Washington cartel. And yet I'm the only one on that stage that has a record of doing it over and over and over again.
Senator,
they trust me, but they don't have the record of walking the walk.
You're a pariah to Republicans. And what's so sad about why you are in that position, your only fault is fighting for the very same things that they themselves promised their voters during elections in 2010 and 2014. So if we're going to play this out on Planned Parenthood, we already know the outcome: capitulation, surrender on Obamacare, capitulation and funding of illegal executive actions on immigration. So if we're to play out what's going to happen on Planned Parenthood, basically, and by the way, the House today voted along party lines to freeze out federal funding for Planned Parenthood. Now, Republicans can take, and I would suggest, if they want to make a play that is media savvy, they could take the $500 million that they're giving to Planned Parenthood and give it to other women's health groups.
Absolutely.
That are not corrupt in selling fetal body parts for the purchases of Lamborghinis, etc. And they could put that money and direct that money towards that and pass a continuing resolution, dare the president to shut the government down. And if he shuts it down, go on television and make the case why you refuse to fund Planned Parenthood, how you're helping health care for women, and how this is the president's decision and not yours.
Sean, you are exactly right. That is.
But that doesn't seem hard to me. What is it? Because I'm an outsider and I have no idea what it's like in Washington? Why does that seem like an easy thing to do to me?
Because you're assuming someone has some modicum of a spine. And what our leaders know is if they do that, President Obama will then veto funding for the government, will blame the shutdown on Republicans. And here's the kicker. Our Republican leadership will blame the shutdown on Republicans. Our leadership, their standard reaction anytime there is a battle with Barack Obama is our leadership turns around and aims the guns at conservatives.
No, by the way, they predicted because of your filibuster, which I watched almost the entire thing. I was up with you for most of the time. I did nod off a few times. They predicted that filibuster would result in a catastrophe in 2014, and that did not happen, did it? It was a record year.
That's exactly right. And, if they had been proven right, suppose we'd been clobbered in 2014, we'd lost Senate seats as they predicted over and over and over again, you better believe all the Republican graybeards would have gone on television and would have said, see, we told you so. It's all Cruz's fault. But instead, in 2014, we won an historic tidal wave victory. We won 9 Senate seats. We retired Harry Reid. And the number one issue was Obamacare, literally the central issue on which we had been fighting to energize millions of Americans. And leadership learns from that.
Isn't Iran similar to, can we add Iran to Planned Parenthood, Obamacare, and immigration? Because aren't there things we could have done and can still do to stop this Iranian deal, which I have, for the life of me, not figured out one thing that we get from this deal, not one.
You are exactly right, Sean. This deal is catastrophic. It is the single greatest national security threat facing America, the threat of a nuclear Iran. I have laid out a detailed plan to actually stop this deal, and that is for Congress to conclude that President Obama didn't follow federal law. He didn't submit the full deal to Congress because he held off the so-called side agreements, the inspection agreements. And under federal law, if he doesn't hand over the entire deal, it is illegal for Obama to lift sanctions. Now, the problem is neither McConnell nor Boehner has been willing to do this. I wrote them both a letter laying out a detailed roadmap. If you just follow federal law, hold the president to the law, we can stop $100 billion from going to the Ayatollah.
Is it 100 or 150? You keep saying 100. I keep reading 150.
It's over 100. The estimates are over 100. It could be as high as 150.
Wow. So we're giving it to the number one state sponsor of terror, They have a zero outbreak time in 11 years, according to the president. They continue to be the number one state sponsor of terror. They get to have 24 days, at least 24 days notice for inspections. They even get their own inspectors in certain parts of the deal. They get to a missile defense system with Russia. They get conventional weapons, and they get to build their ICBM missiles so that they can reach the continental United States when they eventually finish their nuclear weapon. They'll have the missile capability to reach us. That's brilliant. That's just absolutely a brilliant plan. We didn't even get 4 American hostages freed.
Well, unfortunately, the Obama administration views this purely from a lens of domestic politics. And President Obama wants a domestic political achievement. He wants this deal. They didn't care what was in the deal. The substance didn't matter. You know, at the beginning of Obama's second term, his deputy national security advisor, Ben Rhodes, stated that the Iranian nuclear deal was going to be the Obamacare of the second term, their major achievement. I think he meant that as a compliment. It is staggeringly bad for the United States. It is, as Prime Minister Netanyahu has rightly observed, an existential threat to the nation of Israel. And what we have seen is congressional Democrats, they have made a decision that they value partisan loyalty more than the national security of the United States, more than standing with our friend and ally, the nation of Israel, and more than protecting the safety of millions of Americans. And I'll tell you,
it's sad. It's sad. This is. Yeah. My mother used to always use the term, "You're going to rue the day." I'm going to rue the day on everything. We'll rue the day on this. Let me ask you one quick last question, only because I don't have enough time. I was frustrated watching this debate, because I wanted to hear more from Ted Cruz. I wanted to hear more from Marco and Walker and some other people. And, I look at the time at the end of this, and you get the short, stick every single time. It's frustrating to me. Are you frustrated? And I also didn't like the format, which is, you said this about him, WWE.
The debate moderators, by and large, are not going to be voting in a Republican primary. So they're not interested in actually how Republicans determine who will best fight for the Constitution, who will fight for our values. They're interested in the food fight. They're interested in causing the Republicans to rip each other apart. I think most people aren't interested in seeing a bunch of politicians bicker like school children. So I'm not going to play that game. I'm going to focus on substance and record. And I will say, Sean, I've been encouraged. The reaction we saw after the first debate and second debate was people all over the country going to our website, tedcruz.org, contributing, volunteering. Our momentum on the ground is enormous because people are tired of politicians that talk a good game but haven't walked the walk.
Senator, love having you on. We will continue to give you the time that I think you should be getting in debate so people can make a very informed decision come starting in February. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sean. God bless you.